that one Supreme Being is the indwelling consciousness in all things, in all beings. The sun and moon are his two eyes. Fire is his head. The vision of cosmic scripture is its mind. The wind is its breath. Music is its voice. Its arms and legs, the four directions. The universe is its heart. And from its feet, the earth has originated. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvo Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvishwa Vahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May Brahman, divine reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Our gathering of devotees on this day, Sunday, for our second class in a two-part series of Chidabhasa. This is one of these great Indian high-minded philosophical principles. Is occurring today, and we welcome the live streaming audience and a few of us that have gathered here on the Big Island at the Kedarnath Center to take in these teachings, basically that will center around this other powerful principle called the Mahat. The Mahat really means cosmic mind, or great, the great. Maha, of course, in Sanskrit we know that means great, because we have Mahavishnu and we have all sorts of different words that you put that prefix in front of, and it becomes exemplified and expanded infinitely, as it were. So with in this case, the Mahat is the cosmic mind that will get centered upon, because last week, if you remember, the main chart on Chidabhasa was the trickling down, or we should probably say out, of pure conscious awareness into its first compound called intelligence, with a capital I, the kind of intelligence that Lord Buddha named himself after. And then after that encountered the Mahat and the collective mind and cosmic mind and on out, or the deep sleep, dreaming, waking state, the four aspects of the word, para and pashanti and madhyama and vaikari, all these different ways of saying how consciousness works itself into matter. On the drive over today we were talking about it, and I was answering a question about it, and we looked at that beautiful chant from the Svetashvatara Upanishad with a brief discussion that starts out, Adihi Sasam Yoga Nimitta Hetu. And it has that beautiful line in it about Swatitasya Upasya Purvam, Devam, the great Devi, or the great Deva, and how we should perceive that as the primal cause of the relationship between consciousness and matter. So we look out various forms of two everywhere. not only in our features and so forth, but in our minds, dualities which are sometimes very difficult to overcome, like the duality of waking and sleeping. Try and keep our consciousness centered, our third eye open. Our prana is also fivefold or manyfold. So we have a lot of things to gather together. Samanvaya, there's a gathering together that Sri Ramakrishna did of all the world's religions in his own experience. All of India's different darshanas, as we call him Samanvaya Mahacharya. Maha, there's the word Maha again, the great teacher, teacher of teachers. And Samanvaya means this universal gathering together that he accomplished seemingly effortlessly. It wasn't something that he did to prove something, Holy Mother said, his divine consort, Sri Sharda Devi, our Guru's Guru. She said, you never saw him trying to do that or prove anything. He was just loving God so much that he wanted to see God through every different darshana, every sampradaya, every religion even around the world, because he loved God so much. So in this day and age, wonderful that we have a being, an exemplar in our knowledge, in our memory, who loved God first and foremost with all his heart, all his mind, all his soul, and gave himself 100%, he used to say 120%, to the divine being. In this case, his ideal being Divine Mother, but didn't stop him, or she didn't stop him, and in fact she probably aided him in realizing God through the Muslim religion, Allah, having vision of Muhammad or Jesus or Moses, having these experiences in interior consciousness in the kingdoms of heaven, we're saying, which you can visit even in the physical body if you're able to transcend the outer limitations. And transcend means not to identify so much, be able to disidentify with them and focus in on your true nature. So all of these things come to mind when we think of a great ideal like the Mahat. And the name of the series is Chidabhasa, you could say the reflection of God in the universe. And along with the chart last week that I showed you, the main chart, I also showed you the expression of Brahman through nature. We actually went all the way down to fish and the water therein, and trees and plants and animals and so forth. Some quotes from my teacher who said that if consciousness identified in any limited way with various things, then it would become the occupant of those limitations, like we have become the occupant in the body. We're to look at the body, according to Sri Krishna, as a city of 9 gates. And a lot of things are exiting through the body, we know that. But if we look at the nature of our outer senses, we have to trace them inwardly to our inner senses, and the same with the outer mind to the inner mind, or the brain to the mind, and the outer energy to the inner energy, prana to psychic prana. There's all sorts of connections we have to make, and all sorts of gathering together. And if you looked at that under the microscope of, say, Patanjali and Swami Vivekananda, then because Swami Vivekananda did a great study of the Raja Yoga system, Patanjali system, or Ashtanga Yoga, and left behind a simple commentary for Westerners to follow, so that this very abstruse philosophy of yoga could be followed by us, and followed in a way that didn't limit it to just the body, like hatha, or just to breathing exercises like prana, but really to the union, what yoga really means. Because there's yoga as practice, no doubt, but there's yoga as essence too. And that would be the more Advaitic element that we have to keep in mind. So Patanjali and he had both mentioned this need to gather the mind, because the 5 kinds of mind must have been there even in Patanjali's time, which is maybe 150 years after Jesus, in that incarnation of Patanjali. We know he was born again later as Gaudapada's student, Govindapada. But in that incarnation where he systematized the 8 yogas, which kind of gave him that affectionate title of the father of yoga, he was busy talking about the 5 kinds of mind. So even as late as then, and because that's rather late in time for India, go much farther back to Sri Ram and before, thousands of years jumps. So if you find out that he was talking about the 5 kinds of mind, then at that time they must have noticed that many people's minds were very scattered. I probably dare to say that it's not nearly as scattered as they are today in the West. I mean, we've got very unhealthy minds. Not only minds that are pretending to be sane, but are really thinking insane thoughts, but minds or brains that have actually become incapacitated by distraction and are being reborn in a retarded way. So in that sense, you could look at the scattered mind teaching or the 5 kinds of mind teaching as a very dispersed mind, that like iron filings that have no magnet anymore. And it's a good analogy. And so Vivekananda, instead of using the actual Sanskrit for Patanjali's 5 states of mind, which would be Kshipta, Muda, Vikshipta, Ekagra, and Niruddha, he was just talking about 4 kinds of mind, scattered, and then gathering, and then gathered, and then centered, or no mind, Niruddha. So he was telling us in a simple way in this yoga commentary how to get this dispersed mind back into our control, and what were the signs of each step. So I'm thinking about this in terms of gathered mind, or gathering mind. If you find a magnet and you put it near the iron filings, then it'll have a center to get attracted to. So that magnet would be something along the lines of the Mahat, the great mind. You'd want to look at a mind that was greater than yours, a mind that could teach yours. And we could call this the chosen ideal, or we could call this the guru, or we could call this Ishvara, or we could call it Mahat, or any other of a series of names, that Hiranyagarbha, for instance. So this mind that begins to gather and becomes gathered goes through a process of neti-neti, and neti-neti really kind of consists of recognizing the superimposition of form over formlessness. Your essence is formless, and all of a sudden the mind, and this is happening at all 3 of its levels, gets reflected over by thoughts. Now the thoughts of the Mahat are very grand and very beautiful. Like I just said, if you took a great mind like, say, Swami Vivekananda, or Patanjali back in his day, or Lord Vashishta back in his day, then you would have a great exemplar for the highest reflection of intelligence in mind. And then you'd be well off, you see, for having that ideal. It's sort of like get to the Father through the Son kind of idea in the Christian tradition. You'd have the Son there, S-O-N, which is also a metaphor for S-U-N, of course, the great light. And you would be able to follow that inward. So you would take this as your ideal. And that's why you need to probably hear the perspective of other beings in India. Like some of them would call it Om. The word would be that grand matrix. Or others, in other traditions, it would be Shakti, Chit Shakti, the mother of thought, of wisdom. Or it could be this great cosmic egg that they envisioned, where the Trinity rests in. You see this. So you have different ways of finding this, and in the Samkhya system, Mahat would be the word you'd go to, and it's probably fairly well known in even most religions. There's this idea of God's mind. But it's probably not given out so clearly that God, just like you're not your mind, and you will transcend your mind, because you do in deep sleep, and then you do in samadhi. You will in samadhi. So just like you are not your mind, mind is a mechanism, then God is not its mind either. So the Mahat would be a station which consciousness visits. And if we follow last week's trajectory, then we would have this idea that consciousness, the first compound of consciousness, is intelligence, what Buddha named himself after. So if you're looking at Chidabhasa, and then what came up with that was Vivarta, or Neti Neti. So if you take Chidabhasa, Brahman reflected in the universe, and you lean far right, then you go towards Neti Neti. Oh, I'm going to have to look through all these principles we saw, from the 5 elements to the 5 senses, to the subtle senses, to the life force, to all of the 24 cosmic principles and the living beings, the ego self, the universe, and I'm going to have to say no to it all. No meaning that's not my essence. Those are places I visit, you see, as I come out of pure conscious awareness, just like as I come out of deep sleep, I visit dream and I visit waking, and then I retreat back inside. So, in that event, then, if you lean far right, as I was saying, then you get to this principle of Neti Neti. Now, if you start to lean far left, or the other direction, you get to the idea of Chidabhasa, that, oh, I see this is all a reflection. Brahman's reflecting in all these things, just like sunlight is reflecting in dewdrops. The sun is definitely not the dewdrop, but the dewdrop is reflecting the sun in a good way. So those dewdrops would be not only all of this, but even living beings in their bodies. Our body has a certain amount of light in it, and our senses, the indriyas, have a certain amount of light in them. And these are things that Patanjali would want you to meditate on. You know, you meditate on your eye wouldn't mean that you just, like an eye doctor, you know, or into medicine. You see, just take the eye apart and take it out of a dead cadaver and look at it and try and find some secret in it. You see, why did it see? It's not seeing anymore. See, like Swamiji said, cut the optic nerve, eye's still open, but it's not seeing. So there's a physical energy leading to it for the optic nerve, but there's also a psychic energy that leads through that. And the power of the eye to see, they call it. And so then you're looking at tanmatras, because that's also in dreaming tonight. You have a power in your eyes to see still, but it's in a subtler state, that's all. So now you have to open those eyes in dream and truly see. Call it, you know, the involution. You're beginning to involve consciously back to your source. The penultimate source being Mahat, the great mind, who sees, you know, in a way that is far beyond what other beings are seeing. Even the gods and goddesses don't see as deeply as the Trinity does. Trinity is right up there, pressed up to the ocean of Brahman, just right. It's called Brahmaloka. There's Bur and Buvar and Svar and Mahar and Jana and Tapa and Sarva, Brahmaloka, sometimes they call it Satyaloka. So there are 7 worlds like that, almost aligned with the 7 chakras. 2 different systems, but you can make the connection. So one is just talking about worlds, the other's talking about your own centers in which these worlds exist, and you can visit them, and do visit them all the time. So how do I become more conscious of the visitations? Maybe other beings will visit me as I do too. I'll be open to the gods and goddesses that occupy these various worlds, and have some concourse with them, even some discourse with them. So in all of that is this leaning to the left idea of reflection of Brahman in the universe. It's kinder, I was saying. It's a kinder way of looking at it than this terse, I'll cut it off right now, neti neti way. So basically the more monastic or wisdom-oriented, non-dual wisdom-oriented souls will lean more towards that idea of just seeing through the thing and being done with it, sort of like a get thee behind me kind of idea. And those that are you might say, more tantric or more devotional, and who cherish the idea of God in form are leaning more towards this, well, it might not be Brahman, but I can see Brahman in it. See? And so, I probably said before, there's two great yogas, Mahayoga and Abhava Yoga. So the ultimate end of one of the right-leaning soul would be Abhava Yoga. Abhava means no bhavas, no moods, no forms, no joy, no bliss, no ecstasy, just perfect evenness and an equanimity that's its own kind of bliss. Peace that passes all understanding would be a way of saying that. And then the other souls get to this Mahayoga state where it's probably a good candidate for a path for saying, I am now seeing God in everything, whether I'm out or in. And the inner and the outer is beginning to disappear to me. There's no nirvana there to attain, and there's no samsara here to renounce. It is a beautiful saying in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Mahamudra. So you're taking even the highest duality of something to attain and something to escape from, and you're just erasing it. And what's left over is your true nature. Because if you're shifting back and forth between these two perspectives, whether you like it or not, then you're under the press of duality still. So a good kind of overview of the philosophical perspective, and maybe sort of an amalgam of several different seers of India and their thinking processes at different phases of time. So I recall this to your mind then, the Vivarta, because that's where we left off. And we left off with this quote by Sri Ramakrishna at the bottom. And it led us to the idea that we need to probably take up what's called the Mahat and look at it a little deeper. So I brought some charts about the Mahat. Let's refresh our minds by this quote. Brahman is qualified by the universe and its living beings. Well, let's see, there's the universe, there's the living beings. A couple of those big dewdrops that came out of the Mahat. You see that's shining, they're all shining with some sort of light, otherwise they wouldn't be there. If there was no light, could we see the universe? Could we see each other? So light would be a good name for an essence in everything. The light of consciousness being the highest thing, the light of a billion suns being something in between. Because we used to hear about the story about how, the firefly came out at night and thought it was the greatest light of all. All of a sudden, somebody lights a lamp and, it gets all, its ego gets dashed and it flies away because there's a bigger light than it. And then someone lights the campfire and the lantern's not necessary anymore. And pretty soon the moon comes out and the campfire is not necessary anymore. And the sun comes out and the moon disappears. So you've got these gradations of light inward that you could assign as appellations or monikers to this whole process. When we talk about the Mahat, we have to talk about, we have to leave the Advaitic or non-dual level of things, and in order to inspect all the kingdoms within, and how, because we came out through the first grand thought. We're sons of that thought. We're sons of the Mahat. We're sons of Krishna, sons of Christ, sons and daughters of Buddha. So if we want to know how we got here and how we get back, which is the advantage to Vedanta, because science is not giving you the way back at all, and religion is only giving you a way up, it seems, as I said last week. You want to know how to get back in to the source of things. And in that way, then, you're going to want to, as he's saying here, realize that Brahman is there, but it's qualified by living beings in the universe. He goes on to say, at the beginning, while following the method of not this, that's the neti, one has to eliminate the universe and its living beings. But as long as I consciousness remains, one cannot but feel that it is God itself who has become everything. He alone has become the 24 cosmic principles. So finding that quote in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, I thought it was a good representation of both neti neti, which he mentions, and the Chidabhasa idea, leaning left more, of how Brahman is reflected in the universe. And if you see and follow that light, you can move inwards to a grander light by stages, from firefly to campfire to moon to sun and so forth. So you would have to say that the Mahat would be kind of like a grand moon, at least next to Brahman, which is the sun, the all-comprehensive and all-pervading light of everything. So that's why we want to look then somewhat at Mahat. To look at Mahat, it's the first of 24 cosmic principles. I mean, if you take the Prasamkhyana system. So I brought this chart along just so we could see. This has more to do about a different kind of light that's reflected. And we're not going to go there with it today. But the scriptures, how the scriptures come out and down through all of the 24 cosmic principles, basically listed here and here in Sanskrit. And how illumined beings would come out and use these tattvas, that is tattvas, all the different 24 cosmic principles, use them on their way out in order to bring the wisdom of the Dharma to people. Because that's the saving grace of India, is the Dharma. And that is the qualified by the universe level of thinking. The coming and going being all erased, that's the non-dual. Like, it doesn't really happen, it's a dream, it's a projection, it's a sankalpa, it's a mahasankalpa in the case of Lord Brahma, and Shiva will take it all back at the end of a cycle. Those are comings and goings, and beginnings and middles and endings and so forth. Those get X'd out of the equation when the mind reaches non-duality, and none of that happens anymore. It's as if it never happened. So it's not something to be necessarily argued about or be in contention with, but there are three great steps which Vivekananda told us about, which is his new discovery, or his renewed discovery in this day and age, is that beings come out of the non-dual Brahman, and then they live by these teachings, and then they bring them down to the world, and then they go back into the wisdom of the teachings, and then they merge back into Brahman. So these three steps are taken by illumined souls who never lose their way. They've been following this way since time out of mind, and they are the sons and daughters of Ishvara. And Mahat produces some 4 to 10 sons every cycle. Lord Vashishta was one of those, and we've studied his great system called Yoga Vashishta. So we won't concentrate on all the scriptures, although we have showed this chart before, and I've gone through every one of these beautiful scriptures, which is just a list which is on my shelf, which I've studied in my 69 years of life here in this birth, in this lifetime. So we won't take all these up, but it is a good chart to show you the various 24 cosmic principles, both in Sanskrit and English. And so I show it here. Now you can see there, if we follow it, that word Mahat there. And Hiranyagarbha, cosmic egg, or Garbha, a mass of light. Hiranmayi Pare Koshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam is a chant that we memorize. This mass of conscious light is you might say, the firstborn, or the compound intelligence of consciousness. The archetypical soul is another word in which we've used, like Ram and Krishna and those great souls, the firstborn. Very, very, very subtle forms, or maybe even causal forms, which are birthed there in the atmosphere of the Trinity. That's their home, and that's their essence, and everything that trickles out from there is a product of their thought. So in that way you could say all these objects of the physical world are also have their seeds in the Mahat. Great forests and oceans and seas and land masses and so forth, that we get so amazed by out here for a while. And we probably should stay in wonder of them and connect them, or all have their seeds back in the Mahat. So you could go into your dream tonight and walk through a vast forest and see beautiful trees and so forth, and go on and on about how beautiful the trees are and all. But basically you can see them out here too. So the stepping inward and keeping your consciousness far enough back to where all these disappear into seeds would be the route of the great seers as they came involved back to the source. So the source there, or we would have to call it the primordial source, and probably also the penultimate primordial source, is Hiranyagarbha. There's another word for it, Mahat. And then you can see the fourfold mind of Buddhi, Ahamkara, Manas, and Chitta. One of those wasn't contained in the Samkhya, the thought. Chitta wasn't contained there. It came about later. They separated mind from thought. And when they say, in the original, they say Manas, they just infer Manas and thought together. But here you have pretty much a representation of the Antaha Karana. Karana means cause, Antahara means inner. So it's saying explicitly that that thought, intelligence of the Mahat is the cause for all this. I mean, you can use that to help you believe in God, if you've forgotten to believe in him or her or it again, or you could use that just to fill in your wisdom about how your intelligence and consciousness uses the mind, how it got here through the mind, and how it gets back into higher states of consciousness via the mind. Because these are the mind-only schools, as we often remind the students of Vedanta. All of them in India, Buddhism and Jainism and Samkhya and Yoga and Vedanta and Tantra, they're all talking about this great mind, and that's what makes the tongues go a-wag, you see, and the mind go agog. You see, it's the main course for conversation amongst all the seers, is how this superimposition got foisted on us, and how it became Maya, and then how a part of it is Mahamaya, a deeper intelligence, and how you should be shifting back and forth between these different perspectives. As I said last week, if you're having silly dreams, then you should know that that's just a manifestation of your consciousness when it's nearest the waking state, where everyone else is doing silly things, stupid things, ignorant things, violent things. You've got a whole, billions of people around you who are sharing this, not just this loka and this time frame, this kala, or this yuga, but they're also sharing the waking state, the mind, its thoughts. It's all shared. And so the facility that the transcendentalist develops is to go beyond mind, and the facility that the intelligence person would be to rise above those mundane thoughts, and maybe keep itself above them all the time, and keep itself in a high state of mind, high state of thinking. Like, maybe that would be an inventor or a genius, or they're using their intelligence to lift themselves off, like Sri Ramakrishna said, like a hot air balloon, always like rising above. Not like rainwater that's always sinking to the lowest place, but like a hot air balloon. So probably think of your mind like that. So you fill a hot air balloon with helium. See, that's why it rises, hot air. So that's Dharma. You fill the hot air balloon of your mind with these teachings, like from these scriptures, and it will naturally go buoyant on you. And that has to become a habit that replaced the old habit of rainwater, or you filled your mind with rainwater like a water balloon, and it just sank and splat, and burst on the ground, you see. It attached itself to matter, like the dinosaurs, and became matter, as Sri Ramakrishna said. So those two visions I'll give you side by side that Sri Ramakrishna gave to us. And go with the hot air balloon and find your way back to the Mahat. So this whole thing here, you can see we're calling it cosmic intelligence because last week we pointed out that Vivekananda said intelligence, not will and not desire, but intelligence is the first compound of consciousness. Compound means admixture. It's the first evolute. So if you look at the 24 cosmic principles of Lord Copula, he was outlining that for us. As you came down from cosmic intelligence, then you got cosmic mind, you see, and there's the fourfold mind. And out of that came these tanmatras, and then the 5 senses, and five they call them knowledge senses, and the 5 active senses, and then the 5 elements. So you can follow this down on the right-hand column to get a good view of pretty much of the 24 cosmic principles, which is one of the ancient ways that India proposed by Lord Copula, who really did his homework on the subject. You could see how easy it would be to get confused when you look at, say, Earth, because how many things are here on Earth? Metals, woods. I mean, you could say, well, I've run out of space, and the philosophy has gotten much too cluttered and heavy, but I'll just put it into terms of the 5 elements and tell you that the 5 elements came out of the 5 subtle elements in your dream state last night, and that you made them solidified by the mind and its thinking process. And that power was granted to you by the Mahat, because it's been doing that on 3 levels from the beginning of beginningless time. That's the evolution of all things and the involution of all things, but it doesn't take place just on Earth, in the Burloka, with a bunch of physical planets spinning through space, only one of them inhabited that we know of. But it takes place in these other ethers, they had a word for it, akasha, other akashas that you must study. The space of energy, the space of mind, the space of thought, and the space of intelligence, and maybe the spaceless space of consciousness, with a capital C, or awareness, timeless, deathless awareness. So there you see the Sanskrit equivalent of all those, and I wasn't going to spend a long time. Interesting to see that there are 5 footsteps that have come out of the skies. Those are akashas, coming out of the 5 akashas. And in 5 footsteps mean, because you'll see that all of these are in sets of 5s. So the quintuplication process, like your 5 fingers and 5 toes and 5 senses and 5 types of energy, prana, and so many sets of 5s riddle and permeate this whole system. So probably why you ended up here with 5, and not 3, or like a gecko lizard, or 4 or something. You see, remind yourself, the gecko lizard has to remind itself, well, I came from prana, you see, I came from nature. But you have to remind yourself that I came from consciousness. And I did so in 5 steps of containing 5 times 5, if you want, because this is 5-fold 2 if you add the Mahat into it. So without turning it into a class on Samkhya Yoga, you could see that in order to show you these charts in the Mahat, we need to examine a little bit of what came out. Now here's another version we can look at, which is, of course, the warhorse of our collection of charts. Some 320 some of them now, I think, that I've created on this format. And I think 250 of them have been colorized by now. So the old black and whites we used to use some years ago. So this is a colorized version of the 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya Yoga. Yoga has managed to stay alive as a word in today's day and age, even in America. Of course, it's been sort of replaced by hatha and physical things. Some people are beginning to realize that and complaining about it. Bring back the original yoga and use the hatha just to reach one position, and then one breath and one unified mind, and get into the other 7 limbs, if you will, or the other all the other limbs, even the limbs before it, because those are sets of 5s, 5 yamas, 5 niyamas in yoga, or nonviolence and truthfulness and study of scriptures and non-covetousness of other people's goods, and all those kinds of things are very worthy of your consideration and your realization before you even sit. But since that's the order of things, but since that's not the way it's happened in this day and age, and everything is quite ass backwards, then we're going to have to review the real meaning of yoga. And Samkhya Yoga would be one of the things we would then take recourse to, because you don't find the Nyaya or the Vaisheshika or the Purva Mimamsa studied by the world anymore, not even much in India. Those are 3 of the 6 darshanas. What you're finding is Vedanta and yoga, and of course yoga is threatened by the physical yoga now only in this country. But we mean the original 8-limbed yoga plus Samkhya. If Samkhya begins to enter into our philosophical understanding, we make it one of the pillars upon which we understand Indian darshana, thereby the darshan of the Buddhists, of the Jains, and so forth. Then we will have a good recourse to the Mahat. We'll understand what came out of the Mahat, and we'll understand how to return to the Mahat, the great. It's an ennobling thought. Can I be great again? Can everything be great? Can even this earth be great again? People are talking about, oh, this and that politician is going to make America great again. You see, until America gathers wisdom from another source, and it's not just knowledge that's there to get you a job and to get you money and to get you pleasurable objects and so forth, it'll never be great. It'll be great in power, and people will fear it, but it'll never have true greatness to it. The true greatness comes from knowing the value of consciousness that's in it, the goldness of gold, the silverness of silver, the manliness in man, the womanliness in woman, as Vivekananda was writing, the essence of things. So this I'm showing to the live streaming audience and for posterity, for future people who will look at this class. And for those here, we can come up closer and look at the break, but you can see here these are not cosmic principles. These are, as it were, Purusha and Prakriti are the eternal couple, divine couple. And Purusha is the sentient soul, the self. Prakriti is insentient nature, the non-self. There's a category for the non-self. It's unconscious material energy, or unmanifested nature, or intangible matter. Just the very mention of it opens up knowledge of tanmatras and prana and such things for us, what we never knew before. Vivekananda came here and he said, oh, I see you don't have any inner life. You know why? Because you don't know about the prana and the tanmatras. And Christ was trying to teach the fishermen about prana, that you don't live by bread alone. And so you can see how recent, but also how long it's been since we've heard any mention of prana. What to speak of psychic prana? Vivekananda was kind of the one who brought that back to us in this day and age. In that Raja Yoga commentary, he said there's an energy that moves your thoughts too, and it's not food energy, and it's not kinetic or electric energy. So if you're trying to zap the brain with electrodes and trying to get it to come alive like a Frankenstein, you're on the wrong track, you see. Intelligence abandoned it a long time ago, and so did energy, prana. And the only way you will bring it back is to realize it when you have it. See, while you're living, you must become a jivan mukta, a living liberated soul. And if you're not, then you probably should start with some breathing, which is prana, and then some examination of your dreams, which is tanmatras. If you want to put it very simply, those are the things you need to examine and confirm. You see, these have to be included in your way of proceeding and your thinking. You have to look at them like you could look at them on a chart, you see, and see them and account for them. Like there they are, tanmatras: audibility, tangibility, visibility, flavor, and odor. You can see how they connect with hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling. Just draw them straight across the board and you can see. And then how those, under the auspice of the mind, fall into the 5 active senses and the 5 elements, right on down to ether, which goes with audibility, air, which goes with tangibility, fire, which goes with visibility, and water, which goes with flavor, and earth goes with odor. Why are they so well connected? Because that's the way consciousness figured it. And when it figured it, it came out and occupied it. See? Brahman is qualified by the universe and its living beings. So it thought the universe, and then it became a living being in it. Just like if consciousness identifies with water, it'll become a fish, we were saying last week. So it's all a matter of what you take into account and what you identify with and what you utilize. If you can utilize all 24 cosmic principles in your next birth, I'm saying knowledge of all 24 cosmic principles, then you'll be a bodhisattva or a jivan mukta. You can go up and down the amber stairs of birth and death, Sri Aurobindo said, without any impediments in the way. And when you find yourself in a body on this side of the curtain of Maya, curtain of nescience they call it, you'll immediately start remembering where you came from. It won't just be a matter of one deja vu a lifetime or something, or some insight that you got from hearing a few words. It'll be a matter of full conscious awareness of where you've been and how you've come and how to return. Then on top of that, you'll know that coming, going, and returning is all nonsense. But we'll get to that later. That's for the Advaitic level of thinking. We need to study the Mahat on down, and if we do, they're going to call us, oh, they're not Advaitists. But all the followers of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother are Advaitists. They don't need to necessarily be Advaitic seers and Advaitic teachers, because how can you teach Advaita anyway? But they need to fill in gaps for people. If they're not seeing or living in non-dual awareness, like we saw our teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, peace and bliss be upon him, doing, then they need to find those disconnects and zap them with prana. If they know about the prana, they can, like I said, instead of just putting electrodes to a dead brain and getting a Frankenstein come alive, you're putting real living prana with the electrodes of your own willpower with cosmic principles that are eternal and which you've just forgotten about. So remembrance would be probably more than half the battle in this case. So back here where we were, I'm just saying insentient nature is probably a third thing which we don't know about. Why did I say probably? We don't nowadays. We don't know that everything came from a seed, yet everything around us came from seeds. Why don't we know that? Because if we're only focused on matter, then we're thinking of seeds to trees and seeds to flowers and seeds, but are we thinking to the seeds of our thoughts or the seeds of our ancestors? If we were thinking in those terms, we would have much deeper wherewithal with which to make sense out of this whole multitudinous projection of the Mahat, this great mind, and how it effloresced, how it burgeoned. And maybe we won't run afoul of it either by getting down to the 5 elements and then suffering in it. Oh, why did you do this to me? You see, why am I suffering? And Lord Brahma says, don't look at me. You see, and Lord Vishnu and Shiva have disappeared. You see, so you took on all of these things. You're a father and a son. A son and a daughter of the Mahat, if you're a child of God at all, however you want to put it. You should be a living Buddha. Realize your true nature in 6 months, as Vivekananda said in that Patanjali Yoga commentary he gave us. So, if we knew about Prakriti, Tanmatras, and Prana, we'd be filling in 3 huge gaps in our thinking. philosophically in the West today, probably even in the world today. As if these things get forgotten and they're not lent any importance anymore. But these are the most important things to focus on. And you forget about them at your own risk. And your own risk means when you become bored, when you become depressed, when life becomes meaningless, when you suffer, when you get disease, when death approaches you. There's 5 things right there for another quintuplication, if you want. So you run the risk of those things, but if you keep it in mind, then you infuse it all with divine wisdom, your wisdom, and mother wisdom, say, Shakti. So looking at insentient nature, unmanifested nature, well, we could put it this way: we're only today looking at manifested nature, which is objects. And the objects have become more important than the 5 elements. That's another problem. Rivers, forests, and that's water and land. Suns, the sun, its energy, fire, air. Can we breathe it still? We're focused on the wrong parts of the 5 elements. We're thinking about how these 5 elements can benefit us when the very acts we're doing are corrupting them on the physical plane. We step back and look at them and salute them and leave them alone and consider them as divine properties of the Mahat. Then all of a sudden action is in accord with thought again. And prana is connecting them up. You get a new kind of energy from this kind of thinking. And you live again, you breathe again, you smell again, you taste again, you hear again. And that's just what the Tanmatras really signify. Hearing is audibility, and it means ether, and it means sound, and it means divine sound, it means mother's voice. And aren't you hearing that sound of Om? Aren't you meditating on it and following it to the ocean over a bunch of sand dunes, like Sri Ramakrishna said? If you hear that, follow it inside, because you're going right back to the Mahat when you hear the word. That's why the Om sign is written on Ram's hand, for instance. The Mahat and all its beauties are also sung about in many ways. Speaking about Ram and his beautiful Om sign on his hand, we could say, for instance, if we were thinking of the Mahat and his great sons, we could sing something like Raghupati Raghava Rajaram Patita Pavana Sitaram Jaya Raghupati Raghava Rajaram Patita Pavana Sitaram Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Bhaja Pyare Tu Sitaram Ishvara La Tero Nam Sabako Sanmati De Bhagavan Ishvara La Tero Nam Sabako Sanmati De Bhagavan Jaya Raghupati Raghava Rajaram Patita Pavana Sitaram. O Lord Sitaram, Savior of the lowly and the fallen ones, O great King Ram, controller of the mind and the senses. You are the only one. You are that one with different names. Ishvara to the Hindus, Allah to the Muslims. Please give right knowledge to all. So right knowledge is Samkhya, the original Adi-vidya Daiva. Adi-vidya Daiva. Adi, original, Vidya, wisdom, Daiva, divine. It's the original divine knowledge right here. And it's been forgotten. It's been hasn't been emphasized for thousands of years in any country. And here we are, gifted with it by Swami Vivekananda again in this day and age. And we're not going to sit up and pay heed. I said, oh, this is the route back to the great. This is the direct path back to the great. And it's going to be a lot safer to follow it than to jump from earth to Brahman, or from everyday average thinking into samadhi, if you want to try that, by going on some 30-day meditation retreat and thinking about nothingness. You want to think about everythingness. You want to infuse it with knowledge that it came from. You're looking at it all as ignorance. It's all knowledge. You're looking at it all as Maya. It's all Brahman. This is why we're studying Chidabhasa. It's Brahman reflected in the universe. And these reflections are coming down in levels. Sun, moon, bonfire, campfire, lamp, firefly. It's just a matter of gradation. And the light that's in that is intelligence. The covering over it is ignorance. The light that's in that is intelligence, but it gets covered by ignorance. Who said that? Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, man's knowledge is radiant and beautiful, but like a embryo, baby in an embryo, it gets covered by ignorance. So form covers formlessness at the cosmic level. And down here, it's that objects cover their essence, see. And so we fall victim to the covering power. Avarana Shakti. And then we see it wrong and we get then influenced by distorting power, Vikshepa Shakti. But the revelatory power comes to us in the great form of Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. And then we have to take recourse to it. Say, oh, they're reminding us again in another age of the importance of Dharma. And all pointing us back to our own essence that we've forgotten. Okay. Oh, Ramakrishna, you are the path that leads to truth. If one hears thy name, soon awakens you and strips off this cover of ignorance, delusion. And so, the remover of delusion, we need to pay heed. And so, just a quick run through the Purusha Prakriti principle here, but we wanted to get to Mahat. There's a lot more to be said about this with the gunas. Here's Kapil's own quote on that. He says, like a magnet, Prakriti attaches itself to Purusha and receives its conscious rays. If that isn't a one-sentence description of Chidabhasa, I don't know what is. Like a magnet, Prakriti attaches itself to Purusha and receives its conscious rays. So all of these things, because Prakriti is close in proximity to Purusha, it attracts consciousness, intelligence to it, rays of intelligence to it, streaming like wisdom particles, as the book I offered to all of us relates. If Prakriti becomes manifested, because it's unmanifested like in deep sleep, if it becomes manifested, then it becomes these. You see, 5 senses, 5 active senses, and matter. It's still in a rather unmanifested state when it's a tanmatra or when it's prana. But when it becomes manifested, then it's receiving less and less of those conscious rays. You can't really study nature and call it sentient. So that's why they say Prakriti is the insentient side of things, the tattva side of things. But Purusha is the intelligence side of things, the mind, intelligent, buddhi side of things. So this is a clarifying agent, like collyrium for the eyes or alum for tainted water. It's a clarifying agent. It separates it into two healthy things instead of two deluding things, if you know what I mean. Dvandva mohena, Krishna said, pairs of opposites are deluding. He means things like pleasure and pain, virtue and vice, and so forth. But these are two healthy things to look at. There are sets of twos that are cosmic in nature, like, say, birth and death. Study those, meditate on those, or bondage and liberation. Those are very healthy dualities to study. Well, if you go to the Mahat then, you see its description here is initial disequilibrium, most subtle, most sattvic, most pure. So it's still in a very inactive state in a sense. That is, as far as we judge action by outward standards. It's very subtle what it does inwardly. Its thought gives rise to lokas, worlds, akashas, realms by the thousands. Even here we got realms by the thousand. Just go out and dig in the dirt a little bit and you see a realm of worms and a realm of fleas and a realm of bees and flies. Why, here in the ashram the other day there was a whole realm of flies hatched, you see. And we had to take them out with a vacuum cleaner, you see, and liberate them. So there's so many realms even right here in this room. See, there's a realm of books on the shelf. It has all knowledge in it, spiritual knowledge. And a realm of tiny microorganisms in the carpet. See, ew, don't say that. And then why is it so impossible to believe that inside there are so many hundreds and thousands of realms where beings occupy, different beings occupy, using prana, energy, and manifesting their expression, like light, like Chidabhasa, manifesting what they have to manifest in that given body or lifetime. So when you look at Mahat, you'd have to say, yes, but it does it most subtly, and nobody ever knows about it. It's like Divine Mother's own secret, the Trinity, see. So they have to sing about it. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We have to sing about the Trinity to make us think, oh, there's a Trinity? Oh, it's a great mind? It's in charge of all the processes of projection, sustenance, and withdrawal on all levels of being? How marvelous. Or sing about it in any way you want. See? Like in the beautiful Arti hymn they sing almost every day. Tum parane paramatma tuman tarayami, tuman tarayami, para brahma parameshwara, para brahma parameshwara, tuba sabake swami, Om Jaya Jagadish Hare. Beautiful Hindu Arti hymn, you see, a traditional one, which they sing in India. Hundreds and thousands of people gather together and sing this. Wow. So that's all about Mahat, or Ishvara. The eternal, the ever-supreme art thou, and the indwelling spirit in all things. There's Chidabhasa, isn't it? Indwelling spirit in all things. O ineffable and almighty Lord and Mother of the universe, victory to the blessed Lord of the worlds. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. So they sing that at the end of every refrain, every verse, and these beautiful verses like that. So in so many ways it can be sung and eulogized, idealized. But you don't want to just idealize the real, you want to realize the ideal, as my teacher used to say. So Mahat, beyond the Mahat then is going to be these two primordial principles of Purusha and Prakriti and the sentient self, which later they opted more for calling Atman. I mean, in a sense, you could call this Atman and Unatman. The Unatman is insentient, so it can't be ultimately real. And the Atman is perfectly pure and sentient and all-pervasive in everything. Even as the song just sang, it's the Lord manifesting in all things. Our eyes see because of that light. Our ears hear because of that light. And deeper, our ears hear and understand because of a deeper light. If you're paying attention, you see, in your lifetime, you're sitting up and paying attention to the Dharma, then that means intelligence is a march to the forefront of these. You see, what can happen otherwise? The ego can march in front, see, or dim thoughts can march in front. You see, what you want to do is to have our mind with its divisiveness and its dualities and its fragmentations, as we were saying earlier, can march in front. But if you inform it with the buddhi, you can see how high up the buddhi or the intelligence is on the list of Kapil's cosmic principles. Faculty of discrimination, intelligence. And of course, as we were talking again on the ride in the car over today to the center, the intellect is a sheath for containing intelligence. So if you have the faculty of discrimination in it, it will know that. You see, the buddhi will say, oh, this is beautiful. I just love my intelligence. Oh, wait a minute, it's not mine. You see, that's the ego just spoke through me. You see, and it was so quick to take it. Before I even knew it was happening, it said, it's mine. See, I love my intelligence. I love my room, you see. And it's mine all of a sudden, just like that. Quicker than the mind can even think, the ego is in there, putting its finger on everything, putting its mark on everything, distorting everything. Or it can start thinking about, with chitta, thinking about how it's its knowledge and what it's going to do with its knowledge. And that's the mind, isn't it? It's planning every little thing in cahoots with the ego to take what the intellect has and mar it. And turn it into a matter of false superimposition. Overlays, conditionings. And that's going to go on with karmas and samskars. All this begins to connect in a very questionable way as consciousness marches out in this. It should be reflecting purity all the time with discrimination. It loses that faculty. And you could say that means it loses its spiritual life. I think I mentioned last week, or to someone recently again, that if you have viveka, you have a spiritual life. And if you don't, you don't. The power of discrimination has been talked about from the firstborn, sons of the firstborn, Lord Vashishta, all the way down to Vivekananda's appearance here in the West. He named himself after it, Viveka, the power of discrimination between the real and the unreal. So the bookends of India, if you want to say, from Ram to Ramakrishna, from Christ to Chaitanya, from Muhammad to Moses, however you want to put it, this long trickle-down or trickle-out process of intelligence has to be kept refined and under the press of the Mahat and the Buddhi. So to realize that the intellect has intelligence in it is different than looking at the intellect and saying, look at all the knowledge it has, I want to expand that and use it for my own good. See? That's the ego and the mind in cahoots. If I use it for the good of others, then you've got a refined ego. And consciousness has come down and identified more with the buddhi than with the ego, you see. And actually we've just probably done the commentary on these two, so we don't really have to say much more about it. And of course those are called the 8 origins and the 16 evolutes that come next. And this is all Samkhya Yoga's figuring, and Father of Yoga took this and turned it into a whole series of meditations for us called alambanas. All of these now become, the tattvas now become alambanas. Because if they're tattvas, there's something you look at and you say, oh, that's part of unmanifested prakriti, it's insentient, but my consciousness borrows those and visits them. But if all of a sudden Father of Yoga looks at it and says, well, actually, you don't want to just look at them as something just for that purpose, but you want to look at them as things that reflect Brahman, Chidabhasa styles, so you want to look at them as stations for your meditation. Now I'm meditating on water. You see, I know what water is, and on air, and on fire, and on ether, and those meditations will lead me to the Tanmatras, which are just the 5 elements in another form, a subtler form. You smell because of odor. You see, there are 2 different things there. You taste because of water, see, because of flavor. So these are 5-fold qualities, you see, that connect with one another. And if you connect them, then you're in full capacity. Like I said, you can come and use these 24 cosmic principles like a bodhisattva would, or like a jivanmukta would, or an illumined soul, or an avatar. And you'll value them, you'll revere them, you'll see God in them all. Because Brahman is reflected there. Lord Kapila himself, when he put together this, composed this system, he said, the 23 evolutes are the non-self. The Purusha alone is the self. This realization eradicates pain permanently and totally. Another reason why Patanjali wanted you to meditate upon them. To eradicate pain. For how long? Permanently. Totally. So you master them and you use them, you actually begin to get exquisite pleasure out of them. You know, they don't cause you pain anymore, nor do they put you off with some insipid pleasure, because you don't really know them and what they're capable of, as just being expressions of your own mind. You alienate yourself from them, and then they become enemies, or false weather, or what they call fair weather friends. You see, fair faces and false hearts I was thinking of. So again, didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, but if we look at the Mahat, you can see its position in this whole list of tattvas, leaning more toward the insentient and more toward the sentient. It's like the way I like to teach it. This whole side of the chart, you know, has a more of a connection with the sentient, and this whole side has a more of a connection with the insentient. So that you can follow intelligence in its run right into the 5 senses. And that's why they're called, you know, indriyas. They're little gods. In the remaining time in the first half, I didn't have a particular order in which to go through all of these things, but I think the next go-to move probably be best to show this in terms of gunas, or qualities, because we didn't really take up the gunas here. It says Prakriti, in an unmanifested sense, consists of the 3 gunas, but they're in equilibrium. So if the 3 gunas, which is balance, activity, and stasis, or if you want to put it in terms of the mind, balance, restlessness, and slothfulness, or inertia. Inertia would be a good word in science. Whether you know, because you could apply those 3 definitions to each side of these. Let's see. To the mind, it would be the 3 gunas would be, you know, happiness, see, balance, happiness, kind of thing, and rajas would be activity and restlessness, and tamas would be the mind's sluggishness and so forth. But if you put it on this side of the things with the tattvas, you could see how it could be something like, like stasis and motion and inertia, and how those three would connect together on the 24 cosmic principles, and how the gunas are working. You could begin to detect the gunas working and everything. But probably best for all of us, as we've said, if we detect the gunas working in here first. You could study a raging river or a lake or a swamp, and you'd find the three gunas in those three things. You see, the raging river is just tremendous activity. The lake, quiet lake, is this beautiful bliss and equanimity, and the swamp is just tamas. You see, the stinking, slothful water that's putrid and so forth. So the three gunas are in everything, but that's just a study scientifically of the outer again, where the gunas, how the gunas manifested themselves as the 24 principles came out of the Mahat. You're probably most interested in why is the Mahat the most subtle, the most sattvic, the most pure. Can I make my mind like the Mahat? Can my mind become great again? Or remember its greatness would probably be a better way of saying that. Can it remember its greatness? You look at Vivekananda, and do you have any doubt? You see what a great mind was there, even in the body. So let's look at this in terms of the gunas, and you could see, following that introduction, that up the right-hand side of the chart are the gunas. Tamas is predominant when all of these lower forms of these tattvas are there. Rajas is predominant more at the level of the projection of the worlds. Sattva is predominant at the level of the deep sleep state, and then gunas in abeyance, all three of them become what was called here in equilibrium. See, at the level of beyond mind. See, like your deep sleep state. So you could follow the gunas in a more cosmic way up the side of this chart. You can see how they connect with each cross-section of this chart. So we're talking about saguna and nirguna. So nir means absence of or made extinct, like that you can make the gunas go back to equilibrium if you want. You do it pretty much every night in deep sleep, but you don't know how you did it, and you come out of it and you wonder about it. But the great seers will make it consciously, make them consciously go into balance, and then they'll carry that balance out into the world. So you can almost say, even though they're availed of the gunas, they're also extinct in them. They're not acting because of the gunas. They have a way of acting without acting. Krishna describes that in the Gita. Those who know inaction is in action, and action is in inaction, they truly know. So they're being given clues to that state of inactive action and active inaction. One of those wonderful dichotomies that you, again, ponder as a higher duality. Now, if we were to start with the saguna level of Brahman here, there's a thick granthi here, or line of demarcation between saguna and nirguna. And as far as the person's individual states, I've put here waking, dreaming, visionary, deep sleep, and turiya, and of course turiyatita, which is beyond. So over here is the gunas, and prakriti, more the tattvas, and over here is the dreamer, you see. I mean, 7 stages of lower knowledge are here, and the 7 stages of higher knowledge stretch up here. It would be another nice overlay. Lord Vashishta's teaching of the 7 states of lower knowledge and the 7 states of higher knowledge. You probably remember that teaching. I think we had it at the last Hawaii retreat, in fact, a chart on that. So this is more in terms of then the dreamer, or the person who's caught in the net of this projection, which originally was the Mahat's design, but the more far-flung, I like to say, or the more trickle-down that happened in this, the denser and denser got the tattvas, And therefore the mind followed that, and it became denser and denser, till you get animals and plants and insects and so forth. And that's the risk and the nature of matter, which is why he says, he gave the great quote there, like a magnet, Prakriti attaches itself to Purusha. Okay, fine, but don't make sure the Purusha doesn't attach itself to Prakriti, is how Father of Yoga put it several thousand years later. The seer has become attracted to the seen, and this is backwards. Now the seen has become master of the seer, and that's not right. The insentient has taken over control of the seer. So that's backwards, and anyone would say so, especially those who knew what it was like to be the seer, to be master of everything, master of all this, and have no fear and no doubt. Because fear and doubt are the two things that get removed, the two more primordial things that get removed when you master this process. Other things will go with it, but fear and doubt are the two last things to survive in the mind that reaches a level of Turiya. If it wants to penetrate this curtain of nescience, fear and doubt have to go. So it's not just, I'm afraid of a dog barking next door, I don't want to go over there, or I doubt the existence of God or something. Those things are just sort of things that must get behind you and take on the real ramifications of destroying doubt and fear, so that you're living in a doubtless, fearless state. My teacher used to say that quite often. He'd say, the great seer has put sleep to sleep. It's made doubt doubt itself. It's made fear afraid of itself. And put death in its own grave. That's what I'm trying to think of. Put death in its own grave. So he would make statements like that to illustrate what he had accomplished, you see. He lived into his 90s, with this prana gone out of his senses, still speaking the Vedanta from the podium to us in the same way he did when he was in his 70s and 80s. So, and reciting the Gita by memory, the whole thing, in English or Sanskrit at that age. So divine memory had stuck to him. He'd spent his whole life, some 70, 80 years of his life, and probably lifetimes before, drinking in the ocean of immortality. The nectar of it. That nectar, which has been stirred, you see, by all the thoughts of the avatars and by the Trinity. See, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva have breathed their life essence into it. That nectar exists in Sri Ramakrishna in full measure, one of the songs of our tradition says. It's in the avatar. So, the Trinity is a great representation of that. We'll get to that. So let's take a quick look. It's just a review. You can see there below the Trimurti, which is the three great beings. Trimurti is these three great forms. You can see where tamas operates in a cosmic way and where waking and dreaming take place in turns. Those are kind of the highlights. And it's gross form and subtle form that are going on there. So you're using these 20, you see. And of course, one of the things, unfortunately, that's not included in the Samkhya is prana, the 5 pranas. That got expressed later in other systems a little bit more. But prana's always been a very subtle thing. That's why I was saying tanmatras and prana, Swamiji said the things we're missing in our thinking that make us disconnect from our dreams and the kingdoms of heaven within us and forget the wisdom of the ancients and so forth. If we don't have the prana to connect us there to the psychic prana, and we don't have the knowledge that the 5 elements have sources called subtle elements, then all of that's erased, you see. It's just erased, like this big line, you see. It just pretty much takes it and makes it unbelievable. It veils it, horribly veils it. Avarana Shakti at its best. Let's just blot it out, you see. It just doesn't exist anymore. It's not just God that doesn't exist, it's these tattvas that don't exist. Well, there's the gross form represented by the earth, and you can see these very same things that I just connected for you listed there. You don't have to go through them. There's the 5 elements, there's the active senses, there's the knowledge senses, hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling, and there's the tanmatras. So these 20 make up the realm of gross form leading into subtle form, and or call it individual mind and collective mind, because this waking and dreaming state includes your ancestors. They've moved by the prana into the lower kingdoms of heaven, you could call it, and they've moved into a subtle form, into their mind. Now, when the seers inspect their sukshma sharira, or their subtle mind, they know what it consists of, and they know how to get in and out of it, and they know it's not real, ultimately. When the ancestors don't do this, they just move in and out helplessly. You might have heard cycles of birth and death in ignorance. That's a loaded statement. This ignorance, avidya, that accompanies them, leaves them completely unawares and out of memory, devoid of memory of anything that happened to them previously or even during their life when they die. That's just, talk about erasure. See, it's gone. It can only be called up by entering into another body and practicing things like, well, let's say a parigraha. See, if you practice gift giving, Patanjali says, then you're immediately embroiled in commerce. And that's the nature of the world, is to do commerce, to make money, so they can get wealth and objects, so they can enjoy pleasure. You're just described the ancestors and the humans, most of them. You just described 95% of living beings, if not more. But this, I'll quote you Vivekananda stating about it, few, very, very few know this. And you could say there's a part of those very, very few who might have the blessing of seeing it and hearing of it from the lips of an illumined preceptor, but don't realize it, you see. They just walk away from it. Oh, it's a nice system. I could see it has something great to it. But the greatness was in the Mahat. It's like last week we had that quote by Swamiji. The plant has consciousness in it too, but it's not the consciousness of the plant. It's the consciousness of the Mahat that's in it. See how they dim it down? Oh, does the plant have intelligence? Of course not, stupid. It doesn't have anything of its own, and neither do you. It all belongs to higher consciousness. So this is why they give it up, right? They don't possess it. That's the ego's route. And see what the ego runs afoul of? But if you don't own anything, don't know anything, don't covet anything, then you're just leaving a clean slate during your life and at the end of your life, so that when you come back, that clean slate can realize higher things. And it could even escape this rounds of birth and death. Now I know I'm running out of time for my first half here, so you probably should end with that thought, that remember samsara when you look at this, because this has to do with waking and dreaming. That's not just in your 24-hour life that you dream, it's in your 100-year life that you dream. And if you want to know more about it, study Tibetan Buddhism, because the Tibetan Buddhists have really opened up the field, and they teach about bardos. You know, the bardo between the time you die and the time you're reborn, or the time you go to sleep and the time you awake, and so forth, or the time before you take a birth. These are periods of time in your consciousness that you are subject to, and if you master those, then you can have conscious birth and conscious exit from all forms. And you can be careful of forms that will limit you to lower life, to lower life experiences. So here we will come back and pick it up right here at the level of the Trimurti, and look at the Mahat and its function over all of this, and how attaining it is its own fruit of spirituality. So here we will end, and for 15 minutes, and return soon.